I'm probably one of the most privileged people in this room, being able to work with Mike Taitoko, and he hasn't shown you half of what he can do. He's shared a little bit about where he's come from to join up with our crew who are really trying to hack the way we do impact investment. The other people who have joined us as co-founders, Professor Sean Hendy, we've got who's going to rustle up the scientists. We've got Natalie Whitaker, some of you will know, one of New Zealand's early stage investors who's been a force for good in social investment and doing platforms for communities to empower them. And Robert O'Brien, others of you will know, who's doing a lot of the big thinking around the low-level technology and that sort of thing. What I'm going to do is share with you a bit of my journey and why I'm here too. As Mike was saying, I'm going to talk about people, because our people have been colonised too by a lot of wishful thinking. And a lot of impact investment is not evidence-based, and it can cause more harm than good sometimes. And so I'm going to share the journey I took over the last 15 years trying to bring some new tools into government to make government accountable for outcomes. And I'm going to show you just very briefly and quickly why, if we don't do this, we can have horrific outcomes, yet all be very comfortable and complacent about how good we're doing our jobs. And then I'm going to show you the value of actually having better evidence and what that can do. This is real data of a real person who we started looking at. That is a police referral to a youth justice family group conference and some time in a youth justice residence. The people running the youth justice facility would have met all their KPIs, right? As would have the care and protection people, the little green triangles and that there are notifications because that kid's been thought they might be being abused. And they've been taken into care, taken off their whānau, taken off their family. And they would have met all of their KPIs in their little silo, as they would have done when this kid was 11 and got notified and was found with sexual abuse findings and was first taken into care, or when they were 8 and were notified and found with physical and sexual abuse findings, but they got no service that time, or when they were 5 or 6 and were notified multiple times with physical and sexual abuse, or indeed, I can keep going, way back when they were 3, they were first notified with behavioural difficulties. All of those government agencies probably met their hundreds of KPIs around delivering services. And the wishful thinking around whether a family group conference works or not only really becomes apparent when you start to join up the data and look at that person's life journey through the system, being colonised by the system. They actually did quite well. They got NCA level 2, then dropped out of school early. But we know from joining up some of the youth services data that somebody tried to help that kid with an independent youth benefit and some services to help them. That's probably why they entered the tertiary education, which is pretty remarkable given that kind of background. But not remarkable enough because now they're in prison. And we see this data all of the time. We found, and we only started spending real money and getting real services to this kid when they were about 11 or 12. We found 10,000 people in New Zealand who'd been through this journey, most of whom had been through SIFs, costing $5.6 billion and having appalling outcomes for them and their victims. And when we started locking people up, most of the people who are long-term lifetime and service offenders have a journey like this. And I guess I want to say that most of what people are doing is meeting their KPIs and helping someone get locked up, getting your notification on time, doing your family group conference. The real outcome indicator is that. These are the real outcomes for the people who enter the state sector in these kind of circumstances. It's the same in health. We invest late. We invest in, we could be investing a lot earlier in early onset stroke, better rehabilitation, in youth mental health, and diabetes, but we invest late. We invest in tertiary mental health. I sat with my data science colleagues around the state sector and we did a little bit of a straw poll, and we think about 80% of the money spent in the government is going south, it's wasted. We don't think that it's getting value. What normally happens if you got 10 people all receiving the same service, 4 of them wouldn't have needed it, right? Because they were going to get better anyway. 2 of them might have been affected by the service, and then the other, how many left? 6? 4? It doesn't work for them. So you're getting 2 out of 10, right? This is education data. The lines there represent 3 of the very highest needs programs for kids in education who need help to get NCA level 2. Trouble is, the kids most at risk are up the other end. They're only getting 10% of that funding. Most of the funding's going to the rich white kids who kind of are noisy and can stick up for themselves and get the money. I mean, it's the same everywhere. We're not spending money well. I want to show you what happens when you do. So this is a work search service, right? So the unemployment, if you go to unemployment benefits, someone will give you a work search service seminar like this where you teach people how to do their CVs and things. We can now measure, they get a $1.20 return on investment based on the ability to, change two people's lives and how much that gives back to the pot. What happens when you then study, well, hang on, we're targeting this at 4 people who aren't being affected, who didn't need it. They were going to get a job anyway. And the other 4 people who this doesn't work for, because English is a second language or something, when you start to use evidence and target it at the people things most work for, you can lift the impact by 4 times, right? Get up to $4.60 return on investment. That return doesn't have to be fiscal. It could be returns on reduced suicide, better educational outcomes. We're just measuring it fiscally here because it's a benefit system. So both, we don't use data well to look at and be accountable for what we're doing. Our outcomes indicators are appalling. I think the justice sector is just a big outcome indicator. We don't need more money. We don't need to spray more money around the social sector. We need to start spending it accountably and spend it better and start learning what works and stop taking kids off their families when it's not working for them and then locking them up permanently, So let's double our impact by getting evidence-based. What's united Sean Hendy, Mike Totoko, me, Natalie Whitaker and Robert O'Brien is a goal to allow impact investment to learn, to constantly learning about what works. And people say, you shouldn't experiment on people to find out, measure how well you're going. Actually, the tragedy is that every time you have a lovely, pretty idea about what's going to work and run that, you're doing an experiment on people. What's unethical is that you're not learning from it. Kia ora.